I'm Stephanie Bloomhagen. I am both the executive director for Farms. I am the board chair for North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance and facilitating today. Felicity, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Felicity Merritt. I'm the program manager for Farms, and I live in Fargo and work remotely. And then I also am involved here with the North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance.
Karen.
Karen Ahrens, coordinator for creating a hunger-free North Dakota coalition and board member of the NDLFDA. Thank you.
Thanks. Jan.
Hello, everyone. Jan Stankiewicz with NDSU Extension, community health and nutrition specialist and tribal liaison, and I am in Bismarck. I also do some work with GO, Healthy Community Coalition in Bismarck, and Bismarcket, a farmer's market.
Jody.
Good afternoon. I'm Jody Bruins, Leadership Civic Engagement Specialist with NDSU Extension, and I'm in Oaks today.
And Kurt Stoffren.
Hi, I'm Kurt. I'm a professor emeritus in the University of North Dakota. I'm now the chair of Dakota Resource Council. And we'll be joining the group. We've been talking about local foods organizing for some time, and we thought we should join the group that's actually been involved with this effort for a long time and gain from their experience and see where we can fit in.
Thank you, Kurt. And we have some more time on the agenda for you to introduce Dakota Resource Council.
Mm-hmm.
Craig.
Hi, Craig Burns. I'm with the social work department at UND, also here representing Wanawota out of the Devil's Lake area, and am vice chair of the board.
And Paul.
Thank you. Okay. Paul Overby from Wolford, North Dakota, president of the Northern Plains RC&D Council, which covers northeastern North Dakota, 10 counties, and we currently have a couple of local food grants from USDA Rural Development that the council is working on.
Thanks, Paul. Lori. Brian, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, I will. Actually, Lori just sent me a message. She's having problems with her internet there. So I'm Brian Guion. I'm the newest member of the North Dakota Association of Rural Electric Cooperatives. I'm the co-op development specialist, and this would be going on my third week. I did co-op development work out in Montana for 10 years. I ran that center out there. So I moved back here and glad to be back in the state. You know, I've been back for about 6 years now, but in my new position, I'm really like doing this. So hopefully I can help out.
Wonderful. And we will give you some time on the agenda as well to just introduce yourself and your potential for a future presentation from you. Claire?
Yes.
Did you already introduce yourself?
No.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Claire Lostuder. I'm based out of Bismarck. I'm the local foods coordinator for Bismarck. So I work collaboratively with Bismarck Public Schools, City of Bismarck, and Bismarck Parks and Recreation. So on these calls, I'm usually talking about either Bismarcket or Farm to School.
And Lori, you're back. Brian introduced himself. Would you introduce yourself? Oh, wait, she's here, but she doesn't have any video or audio. Okay. Glad to have you, Lori. I know that, Karen, can you help me out? Could you introduce Lori?
Sure. I've been so happy to work with Lori on various projects over the years, especially the Rural Grocer Initiative. Lori working at the North Dakota Association of Rural Electric Cooperatives, something that might not pop into your head when you think of food security or food access, but responding to a call for assistance from rural grocers over the years. They've really stepped up in using that experience to extend over into other parts of food access in our state. Hey, Lori. Brian, you can add if you want.
Jill, would you introduce yourself?
I'm Jill Hawkinson. I'm a community development specialist with USDA Rural Development out of Devil's Lake. And I also serve as the state beginning farmer rancher coordinator for USDA here in the state.
And also with Dakota Rural Action, Sam Wagner has joined us. Sam, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's actually DRC, Dakota Resource
Oh,
Council.
sorry.
Yep. But yeah, I'm the ag and food or field organizer for DRC.
My apologies. Farms works with Dakota Rural Action from South Dakota.
Okay,
On another project.
Used a lot.
Yeah, so I have, okay. DRC. Lucas, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lucas Brindle, owner of Apple Creek Acres, a produce farm outside of Bismarck and Lincoln, and currently selling at Capitol Farmers Market during the summer.
And Harleen has joined us. Would you introduce yourself, Harleen?
Yeah, Harleen Hatterman Valenti at North Dakota State, professor in plant sciences at North Dakota State University.
Welcome, Harleen. And Harleen hosted a farms intern this summer, and we had a great, I think she had a great experience.
Great.
Is there anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to introduce themselves? Perfect. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so glad you could join our October meeting. We've got a full agenda. We're going to talk about October being Farm to School Month and some activities, some conversations we've been having about addressing supply chain issues with schools. But first, I want to, we have some new members with us today. Dakota Resource Council has made the decision to officially join NDLFDA. So I want to give them some time to talk about who they are and what they do and their history of working with local foods and their goals in working for local foods. And then I want to give Brian Gian. Did I pronounce your last name correctly? I want to give Brian an opportunity to introduce himself. We may have a presentation from him at a future.
I was muted there. It's Gian.
Gian.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. So let's start with Dakota Resource Council. Kurt and Sam.
I don't know where to begin. Dakota Resource Council has been an organization, around since the early 70s. We've been primarily concerned about oil and gas development, coal development, and the environmental consequences of that development. We've also been involved in food and ag issues, but mainly on the advocacy side and the policy side. So we've been actively involved with farm bill discussions, sustainable agriculture, et cetera. We have good connections with sister organizations. In fact, Dakota Rural Action is our sister organization, a joint member with us when the Western Organization of Resource Councils, and Dakota Rural Action has been involved in local foods for a number of years. We have our affiliate in Montana has also been involved in local foods efforts, and so we're drawing upon their experience. Some of our members are local foods producers and are kind of making their own way to sell in local foods markets. They're asking us to take more of an effort there in trying to organize local foods producers and helping them market their product. But from my familiarity with working on and doing research on local foods for farms and Northern Plains Sustainable Ag Society, I know there are many players and many different movable pieces, and we're trying to figure out where we fit in. We think our strength is in organizing and in fundraising, but where we're willing to draw upon the expertise of our fellow local foods advocates. And Sam, you want to say anything?
I can just say that I have been working with DRC as the Ag and Food Field Organizer for the last 2 years. I was hired on in 2019. We've worked to create an ag committee in that time that I've been here. And, we've basically been trying during this time to explore local foods, but the pandemic has, hurt the state in more than one way. So we've had, bigger fish to fry, but we feel like now is the time to start looking further into the world of local foods. Thank you.
Well, welcome. And I'd be happy to set up a meeting offline, or perhaps several of the board members could meet with you and we could talk more about ways you could get involved. We may be organizing ourselves into action groups in the future. And so that might be another way to plug in. But we're delighted to have you with us. Brian, would you share a little bit about your work with cooperatives? I believe Lori sent me an email asking if there was an interest or how cooperatives could be used as a way to initiate aggregation and help build local food systems. And so we're happy to have you here with us today, and we are thinking about having you give a presentation maybe in November or December at our meeting. But if you would just introduce yourself and your work today, that would be great.
Okay. Like I said, I'm the co-op development specialist. I've been previous experience when I was in Montana. We did 49 co-ops in 10 years. And some of those, and just the little bit that I've seen so far with the group here, looks like there could be some potential for a cooperative when it comes on the marketing side. And it may, and without having all the particulars, I kind of foresee it as where you funnel everything down to one person, a couple people to work with other entities and that. So you're not having some confusion or frustration from the standpoint of having so many people working with a bunch of different entities. I guess the example I would give you would be Montana branded beef. They had 60 ranchers and marketed over 90,000 head of cattle a year. And they were selling it to SwiftPack. And the frustration was with the ranchers says, we grow the cattle, we sell them, we don't have to deal with all this marketing aspect of scheduling and that. And Swift was so happy to hear that too, because they were frustrated dealing with 60 ranchers and 90,000 head of cattle. So they actually brought one person, they started a cooperative, brought everybody together, and actually had 1 to 2 people that actually worked with the ranchers, kind of as a go-between for scheduling and all that. So I think there's a possibility that this might be something to look at, just off the top of my head. But what my work is to find solutions for issues, or not necessarily maybe it's going to solve all our problems, but help ease any type of problems that are out there. So, and I like to do a thorough investigation of things and listen to people and what their needs are. So that's our role, is what our needs and how we can potentially help out.
Would you be willing to share your contact info in the chat if anyone wants to get in touch with you in the interim?
Yes, I can do that.
I'll be reaching out with some questions, and we hope to have a further presentation from you in the future.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm trying to keep things moving because we have a lot of information to cover today, and wanted to make sure we had some time for a discussion about October is Farm to School Month, but also simultaneously as we discussed in our September meeting, the supply chain breakdowns that have been hitting the entire nation are also hitting our public schools and our school food programs. This is happening here in North Dakota. It's also happening across the nation. So, so starting back at the end of August, we learned about this through Creating a Hunger-Free North Dakota Coalition meeting. And we've been having discussions with various entities. Lori has been helping find solutions. And we also see this as an opportunity for farmers to help fill the gap. At this point in the season, farmers probably can't supply all of the needs of our public school lunch programs, but they could certainly help. So I'm going to start with, I won't go over the whole thing, but if you look at your agenda, we have the notes from our October 8th Farm to School meeting. We brought together representatives from the North Dakota, a purchasing cooperative of public schools, which it purchases not just food, but all of the supplies public schools would need. So we are working with them to try to identify the schools that have the greatest need and connect them to farmers if possible. Department of Ag put together some resources. So I want to make sure everyone is aware of that. Share my screen. So Farm to School, there's a guide that they've put together and a web page. And this is the work of Christine Kostek, who's the new local foods marketing specialist at Department of Ag. So she's not with us today, but I just want to commend her for her hard work on this, getting these materials out on a very short turnaround. So this Farm to School Producer's Guide, I was hoping Christine would be here so she could talk about this. But in her absence, I guess I can say that whatever we can do to get this information out to our farmers and to other organizations, we have the links to the guide here. I also wanted to invite, okay, good. I wanted to invite Claire to speak briefly. You had some town hall meetings with Bismarck Public Schools recently, 2 of them in October. Would you give us an update on how those went? What's happening with Farm to School in Bismarck?
Sure. So the person I work most with Farm to School in Bismarck is the Child Nutrition Director, Michelle Wagner, who I believe was on that Farm to School meeting. And I'm just fortunate that she's interested in doing this work, because otherwise, if her and her staff didn't care, it wouldn't happen. So I think that's one of the best places to start. A couple people have asked me from different parts of North Dakota, how can we get this going? You got to start with the person in charge of buying the food. And if you can get them to understand that it's important, then that's a good start. So one of her frustrations was kind of trying to come back from some false starts that the program had. They started out having a lot of restrictions. The produce had to be a certain type, and deliveries on a certain day, certain time, and the farmers were just like, no, I'm not interested in doing that. And also there was a request for proposal process because the minimum purchase amount was pretty low. And so she's worked really hard on getting over some of those obstacles and wanted to share the information with the farmers. Like, this is how the program actually works, kind of address some of those stereotypes or misconceptions. So she had the idea to host these meetings. And so we worked to, we wanted to have 2 different options. They were at the same time of day, but on 2 different days, about a week and a half apart. And we got a meeting room at a local high school. And then we just recently received a grant through the Blue Cross Blue Shield Caring Foundation. Jan helped with that also. And that allowed us to, I mean, it's going to allow us to do a lot of things, but we used some of that funding to pay for lunch for everybody that attended. So of course, having some food is always a draw for a meeting, right? And just to show them what the lunch line looked like. I mean, a lot of us haven't been in a school since we graduated, right? So that was kind of eye-opening and a fun experience too. So at each meeting we had 3 producers, and it was a really good opportunity to just have a casual conversation, and we explained kind of how the program works and what we're looking for, and then farmers who attended were able to ask questions. And so it was a really nice, laid back, conversational type of thing rather than us just speaking at people. So we were sharing a meal together and having a conversation. So I feel like it went really well. We were nervous that nobody would come. So having 6 total producers was really exciting. And then, one local farmer was kind of skeptical about the program, thought the prices would be too low. And then he came to the meeting and heard from us, saw the suggested price list and was like, okay, I'm on board. And then just yesterday he dropped off 200 pounds of tomatoes. So we're just really happy that the program is progressing. Our goal was to double the amount of producers selling, which would have been 2, and now we're at 7. So it's just really rewarding to see this, in a time when producers maybe are looking for new ways to market their products. Michelle always likes to say we're a guaranteed sale, and you don't have to provide enough for every school in the district, Bismarck being the largest district in the state. There's 16, soon to be 18 elementary schools plus the secondaries. So plenty of opportunity. And then we're just kind of finessing the program as it grows. Right now, it's really flexible when drop-offs are and things, but we're working with the producers that are on board now to plan better for the future. So it's more convenient and as easy as possible for both sides.
I was hoping Mary would share, but since Jonathan is here, and I had invited Jonathan to speak about because I saw their awesome Facebook post about being able to provide 200 pounds of tomatoes. Jonathan, are you able to share?
Yes.
It looks like you're on your phone, but just a little bit about how that experience was for you.
Well, we've done farm to school in the past with Jamestown Public School, and it was actually a little bit more streamlined in that actually we were able to contact Gina and find out how much they wanted and how much we had, and we worked together to just bring them what we could bring them, and she told me where the drop-off was, and they came out with a cart and picked it up, and we gave them the invoice, and we're good to go. So it was pretty streamlined and easy, and we're excited to see what the future holds for Forger Farm and Bismarck Public Schools, I guess.
Great. I'm gonna share my screen so others can see your recent Facebook post about, so looks like you had excess tomatoes and they were happy to take your bumper crop off your hands. So, our goal is to help this happen all around the state. How can we connect other farmers with their schools? And I think part of that is getting other schools to adopt the same sort of attitudes and policies that Bismarck Public Schools have. Sounds like Michelle has been a key part of this.
Stephanie, this is Jan. If I could also provide a comment, if that's okay.
Please, please.
Yeah. So I would like to speak to Claire's ability to build relationship with folks. She's worked really hard to build relationship with Michelle Wagner, the Child Nutrition Services Director at Bismarck Public Schools. And so it really does take willing people to build those relationships and connections, because I strongly believe that if it weren't for Claire and Michelle specifically, that these additional 6 farmers that have just come on recently wouldn't have come on. So I think that an emphasis on partnerships and relationships is incredibly important. And I think that that Claire has done a really amazing job.
Round of applause for Claire.
And I'd just like to build on that too. Over the past more than 10 years that I've been engaged in local food development, tools are great. Like if you have a map that helps locate farmers and where they are and what they have for sale, that's a great tool. If you have a list of schools that are willing to accept, or not even just schools, of hospitals, of restaurants, of all kinds of institutions, places in our state where food is eaten and cooked, that's great. But it's that relationship building, I think, and the time that it takes. And I think that's what's been missing in our state in helping to, like someone mentioned the term misstarts or missteps, or like little spurts of energy, or a little project blooms and then it fades away. So I'm so excited to see all of you here, because this is a time of great distress, but from that is coming opportunities. And I think hopefully we can see from these supply chain disruptions that we can't wait any longer to just see what the food systems are going to bring us here in the state, but we can be proactive in making the kind of food and food systems we want in our state, instead of just waiting and reacting and responding. So that's my encouragement.
I was going to say too, that from a farmer's perspective, if we know what people want, we can definitely provide that to the marketplace. And there's been lots of years where we had a bumper crop of stuff and we simply couldn't get rid of it, so we decided not to grow it again.
So does that mean that it would be helpful to have some of these conversations over the winter so that farmers might know what to plant come April?
Yes. Well, and like with Bismarck Public Schools, we said, well, we want to sit down with you. And what is it that you can take? Obviously, we don't want to step on other people's toes in terms of market, because there's plenty of room for everybody. Mm-hmm. But there's certain things that we do quite well, and we would like to focus on those. And it goes for everything. The schools, the restaurants, farmers have been doing this work. But we're doing it on an individual basis and developing individual relationships. And I think what I'm seeing and what Claire's been working on really well is that there's a broader conversation happening on those relationships. So it's not just me connecting with one chef. It's, okay, here's the list of 10 chefs that Claire knows of that are looking for local food, and here's what they're looking at buying. And, here's 3 farmers who can provide those things. But yes, really the planning stage, in December, January, February is key for any season to be successful for any farmer. So that's what we should be working on.
Yeah, and moving more towards, like Jonathan said, like there's an excess in certain seasons, but then planning for, so it's not just utilizing excess or bumper crops, it's making those plans so that the farmer can, bank on, this certain crop or this amount of this crop to go to a school system, and or the school relying on that farmer knowing that things happen and being, understanding of climate conditions and harvest seasons and all that. But
how can we as NDLFDA, as a coalition, help support this work?
Stephanie, I think just the ability to make these connections like we do at the monthly meetings is a huge step. I know farms and this alliance are both working to be kind of like a hub or a networking opportunity. And, we've talked about building relationships. That's huge, because we are kind of spread out here. And we make connections as we can at conferences or whatever. But so I think just providing these forums is really important. And, if a farmer called you and said, hey, how do I start selling farm to school? Like, you were already starting to build these list of resources.
Great.
And I would also add that the Alliance's ability to connect with other like farmer groups in the state, so like farms or NDFMGA, Department of Ag, so that like Claire said, like if somebody's trying to find either a school, a farmer, or a farmer's market, something, that there is a way to plug those things in, and then being able to know like what a next step is.
From my perspective, it's very much that we need to be engaging the consumer. So whether it be a school or a hospital or some sort of institution or restaurant or wherever it is, the more people we can have come to the table that want to make a transaction with any given farm, my farm or any of the farmers that grow stuff in this state, the more reason there is for us to grow it. If we grow it, and I've had this conversation with many people, we work with FSA to get some funding for our farm, and they said, well, how many acres of this do you grow? And it's like, it doesn't matter. I can grow 10 acres of lettuce, but if I have no place for it to go, it doesn't matter if I can grow it or not. So really the customer, engaging the community, engaging the customer is, from my perspective, the best thing we can do. And that includes institutions like Farm to School. So if it wasn't for, the school wanting to do the program, I have no place to sell it.
Later on in the meeting, we're going to talk about the AmeriCorps communications coordinator that we are looking to hire. And part of their role that we've written in is an education and outreach campaign on local foods. So hopefully that person can help engage consumers in that way. Paul, yes.
I had a kind of a follow-up question for both Claire and actually Brian as well. And it fits into your question, Stephanie, about the role of NDLFDA, and that is, there's documentation out there about the legal things of what we can sell and what we can't and all that stuff. And but this very process that Claire has gone through as a volunteer to build this, do we have that in document? Do we have kind of the one-page sheet of what it takes to build relationships, that type of just a guide to take some of the work that Claire's done and others have done and just kind of here's a kind of a template of this process you need to go through. Some of what Jonathan had mentioned in terms of, you know, food service people being able to lay out ahead of time, all of those. And then it also fits into Brian's question, which has been my long-term concern, and that is how can we scale local food from simply sort of hobbyists providing farm to market thing up into where it's a whole part of our systems, our food systems in North Dakota, and certainly developing those acres for keeping schools and restaurants supplied is a big piece of that. And then finally, that gets into the question which is related to Brian, and that is, it seems to me that some of that starts turning into developing cooperatives, even if not formal, at least an informal structure. And is there enough profit margin in all of that so that the future Claires of the world at least get paid a little bit of something for all of their work to do the coordinating? So that's my questions / observations.
To clarify, I am paid for this position. That's local foods coordinator is my job. I'm very fortunate. But as far as a one pager, that would be a great idea. I was just trying to find the link. I know Stephanie mentioned Christine Kostic put together like a producer guide. I think did you just show it even earlier?
You know
but
what? I'm gonna share my
I would
screen.
say the closest thing we have right now would be what Christine put together. But we, after one of the meetings, the town hall meetings we had, we talked about how it would be nice to have like a producer guide because we're not going to be able to have these meetings and catch everybody. So to put together a guide for producers, but like I said, Christine Kostic has done one that's statewide. So I think that's probably the closest thing we have right now.
The link to that in the chat.
I also put a link to, so there have been 3 or 4 different meetings over the last month and a lot of conversations and some new resources created both from Christine and from NDSU Extension. And Karen made great use of our new website and the member updates page and shared a compilation. It's update for October 18th, 2021 from Creating a Hunger-Free North Dakota Coalition. So if you go to, and this, I'm also taking the opportunity to remind everyone about our new webpage, ndlocalfood.org, and you click on member updates. You can find all sorts of updates, and we'll go through these at the end of the meeting, but I want to be sure to draw your attention to Karen's update, North Dakota School and Rural Distribution Challenges. And she has some articles from the New York Times and Washington Post illustrating how this is not just an issue for us, this is nationwide. She has information about the issues specific to North Dakota, which boiled down to a major distributor pulling out, leaving about over 100 schools in the lurch. And then responses from the USDA, from North Dakota DPI and Child Nutrition and Food Distribution programs. Department of Ag, so those two, that guide that Christine created and their farm to school page. And extension, extension's guide for buying and selling local food, and Rural Electric's cooperatives work in reaching out to rural grocery stores and helping, and some work with the Postal Service to help find alternative solutions. And that is a great question, Paul. I will ask our webmaster if we can set this up so that members get an email notification when somebody does an update. And just a reminder that if you haven't already done so, click join up here and create a profile so that you can share updates. And then if we are able to set that up, you would get those notifications. The other thing I wanted to share about Farm to School is that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, is that several of us are signed up for a Train the Trainer session for Farm to School, which starts next week. Felicity and I already got our materials in the mail or from FedEx. Claire, are you registered? I think Jan.
Yeah, we both are.
Yep.
I just got my packet yesterday.
Me too.
So I'm hoping that will provide some of that guidance, some of that know-how, hopefully about relationship building too. I'm not sure, but this is sponsored by USDA, the National Center for Appropriate Technology, the National Farm to School Network, and it's called Bringing the Farm to School. So we will be engaged in those sessions, I think every afternoon next week. So that should be helpful.
Stephanie, you want me to address Paul's question there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, just basically from, I think, Paul, if I remember, it wasn't that long ago, just as far as what we've done to bring everybody together, yes, and some assurances to the producers. And like I said, I've also did an organic co-op when I was out there too. The whole idea is okay, what am I going to get for my produce? How much it is? So we brought together, we had restaurants, we actually had some schools that we worked with to kind of was in between, because what we found is not everybody likes to go and do searching and talk to the different chefs and the restaurants and the schools. They felt more confident that we produce it. If we go to you as a group, you could source out. So if I need 12 or 14 dozen tomatoes over here, I need 12 chickens over here, and so on and so forth. That one person was able to do that because we had restaurants calling in and the schools to the one individual. I apologize for my phone ringing here. So it was a lot easier for some folks to do that and made life easier. So all they had to concentrate on one portion of their business, not the marketing side. The restaurants and schools like that too, from the simple fact that they weren't dealing with quite a few people. And if we get back to the Montana branded beef portion of it, that one individual was able to negotiate in about a 5 years time, $3.5 million in premiums to those ranchers. So that's quite a bit. And now how that looks with produce and all that too, I think you're able to establish if you're a good producer and you have quality goods, you might see someone else willing to pay more for your produce and that, or your products. But that person was the one who negotiated those. So I don't know if that answers some of your questions. That was kind of a here and there about it, but this to make everybody feel good, like a win-win situation. And then you set in parameters, what quality is and that, and what's expected. And like, I think Jan, you meant kind of like the act of God clause, if you want to call it that, if something happens, those need to be in there too, to protect everybody on that side. So that's a little bit of what we did. And I guess something that I can present on later on too, and just those different aspects.
I think that would be, we will definitely have you do a full presentation. And I think some of us in the room were involved in previous efforts to start producer co-ops. There's a new producer co-op that started out in the east side of the state called Red River Harvest Co-op, and they use an online shopping cart system and have a shared pickup location. So if we, I think that will be the focus of one of our future meetings, bring us all together around that topic.
That
So,
just a
Jonathan,
thought
yeah.
on that. You know, if you were wanting to grow, you know, the local food movement in North Dakota out of the hobbyist situation is how it was kind of put. Serious farmers, the people who want to grow businesses and build brands around their farms, need to be supported by sales. Like, we can borrow all the money we want, but if we can't pay the money back, it doesn't do us any good. So, you know, putting anybody who wants to support local, you know, just saying, "Oh, I'm so glad you're at the farmer's market," is very different than buying something at the farmer's market from your local farmer. So serious farmers need to be supported by sales.
Absolutely. And we've had some great conversations on the phone, Jonathan, you and I. And maybe if you have time at our November meeting, you might share some more in depth about your experience with scaling up, selling through grocery stores and things like that. If you'd be open to sharing some more.
Yes, I would.
Awesome. So before I move on, are there any comments or questions related to farm to school or farm to other institutions? I don't want to move on until we've wrapped up our current conversation. Well, I'll just move on to some updates on North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance. So we're in an interim place where our former coordinator, Felicity, was coordinator through an AmeriCorps position, and that position ended September 15th. Fortunately, Felicity is still able to participate because Lucky Farms got to hire her as our program manager. So Felicity will continue doing some communications work for NDLFDA until we've hired an AmeriCorps communications coordinator. I wrote a small percentage of Felicity's time is her program manager position is focused on outreach with working with partners, which includes North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance, which I would encourage other organizations, if you're able to make participation in the alliance or with partnerships part of somebody's role, that's a great way to be supportive of the local food system as a whole, so that people have the sanctioned time to engage in this work. So we're in an interim space where we don't have any staffing at the moment. We are hoping to hire. So we have been approved for another AmeriCorps position. This one's going to be a Vista, which gives us more time. Vistas are full-time, whereas AmeriCorps are a set number of hours. And this position will be focused on communications. They're going to be doing outreach work, which Felicity had been doing. So social media updates, meeting reminders, helping manage the website. So internal and external communications. And also we'd like them to do a focused outreach and education campaign that helps reach more of the consumers and just the general public. What is local foods? Is it any kind of ag product, or does it have to be grown here in North Dakota? What does it mean? Why do we care about local food? So getting some of those messages out to the public at large about, why they should support their local farmers, why they should shop at their local farmers markets. So we will be working on getting that job posted. So it hasn't been posted yet because it hasn't officially been approved by AmeriCorps, but it's not in danger of not getting approved or anything. And then we are still waiting to hear back on a USDA grant that we submitted to the USDA's Regional Food Systems Partnership Program. We feel good about that grant application, but as any of you who have ever written grants know, it's never a guarantee. So if that grant is funded, we would have funds to hire a full-time executive director for this group who would do a lot of the work that I and Felicity and the board have been doing. So that person would have the capacity to dedicate their time to a lot of this relationship building and systems building and moving this organization forward. And maybe could spend some time helping build farm to institution networks and helps promote cooperatives, as well as fundraising, just overall capacity building, the things that none of us have the time to do because we all have other jobs in addition. So I've reached out to the board to request volunteers for staffing in this interim time, and depending on the responses I get from the board, I might reach out to the membership at large for volunteers as well. Looking for things like typing up minutes, joining the hiring committee, and things like that. So also, you'll see on the agenda some links to a couple of national local food organizations, which we don't have official connections with, but they're just, we've attended some of their virtual webinars and they're great resources for this work. The Michigan State University Center for Regional Food Systems, Felicity and I attended, no, they're the ones that have a SARE professional development grant to forge a North Central region, kind of a community of practice of, so like us, maybe there's like a local foods network in Minnesota or Michigan or these surrounding states. So it's a coalition of coalitions, a coalition of food policy organizations. So they're working to develop a learning community on state food system plans and charters for North Central states. So several of us will be attending their November 9th virtual meeting. And then the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future has a food policy network with lots of great resources for organizations like us. So I just encourage you to check out both of those websites. Lots of good stuff there. In November, we're going to spend some time reflecting on the past year. It's been a year. We've had drought, pandemic, supply chain shortages, unseasonable cold in the spring. I knew we wouldn't have time to really do justice to that topic in today's meeting, so I wanted to give you a heads up for November's meeting, and we'll try to send out some prompts to help you prepare for that discussion, so that we can have a meaningful reflection time on how all of these things have changed local food systems, how they've affected this work and how we've adapted and how we can take that into the future. And then finally, I just want to encourage everyone to, again, sign up on our website, ndlocalfood.org. There's information about us as an alliance. There is a quick link to get to the meetings, as well as to see the recordings and minutes from previous meetings. We're still working on getting the recordings up. And to share member updates and read member updates from others. So since it's just about 3 o'clock, I won't spend a lot of time, but I would encourage you to go read those updates. We have our Farm Dreams session coming up with farms. There's a Healthy Food Financing Initiative grant for retail food systems. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. And just take a look at the other updates that are posted there. So any final comments or questions? Thanks everyone for a great discussion today, really rich conversation. Oh, and if anyone knows of a poultry producer, Jonathan says they are looking, so Jonathan Mosier from Forager Farm, their farm is near Mandan. They're looking to see, they would like to invite someone who would like to grow poultry on their land. So Jonathan, if you drop your email address in the chat, if anybody knows of somebody, please reach out to Jonathan, or you can always reach out to me at Farms or the ND Local Food contact list. The ND Local Food at Gmail, Felicity?
Yeah, I can put that in the chat too. Or yeah.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. And I am officially adjourning the meeting. Have a great afternoon.